call on Deputy Dara Calleary.
Thank you, Concurder. Minister Noonan announced here yesterday evening that some people who have lost their discretionary medical cards will now have them returned. It is still not clear whether all people will have them returned, and the process for return hasn't been clarified. This is a particularly dramatic U-turn for this government, particularly when you all spent 18 months denying that there was a cull underway. I know Minister Riley wasn't in the House. I know he's not in the House now when the announcement was made. However, since the announcement was made, there still continues to be government disarray on the issue. Minister White, who told us a few weeks ago that there was no such thing as a discretionary medical card, has now said it's a collective cabinet responsibility for which he had no part. And now we read reports in all of today's papers regarding last night's Fine Gael Parliamentary Party meeting, where Minister Riley told the meeting the handling of medical cards was a disaster. And he further told them that he sought repeatedly to address the medical card issue, but apparently the political will from his cabinet colleagues was not there until last week. So now we have Ministers White and Riley, who are the Laurel and Hardy of this government, passing the buck rather than taking responsibility for the whole fiasco. And the fiasco is outlined in this morning's Irish Times. In a family in Wicklow where a father has rare cancer, a son has cerebral palsy, and the family are being asked once again to resubmit documentation in relation to their medical card. A case that has been repeated hundreds, if not thousands of times across the country as a direct result of the handling of this issue by Ministers Riley and White. This is only one case, and the ministers are blaming someone else. And Minister, that someone else is you. All of Fine Gael sources today are saying the lack of political will goes back to your desk, and that you seem to be the person that Minister Riley is referring to in relation to his inability to get a buy-in to the solution of this problem.
Question, please.
Minister, can you outline your response to the suggestion that has been said off the record that you are the block for a resolution? And secondly, can you, with this debacle in mind, and granted that you have an overseeing role in the Department of Health, can you express full confidence in Minister Riley's ability to continue his job as Minister for Health?
Thank you. Minister.
The opening premise of the Deputy's question is wrong. There has been no cull or no intention of a cull of medical cards. In fact,
Please.
in fact, the number of medical cards is at an all-time high. At one point, at the end of last.
Please.
At the end of last year, this actually is an extremely serious matter. At the end of last year, there was 1.849 million medical cards. 42% of the population have medical cards. So there's more medical cards in circulation now than at any time in our history. Can I also say that in relation to the way medical cards, I'm a former health minister. Since the 1970 Health Act, every administration has issued medical cards on the basis of the 1970 Act. It was done on a local basis, determined by ability to meet medical costs. There was always a local discretion. Medical cards in recent times have been centralised. That was a decision made by the previous administration, has been carried out. And one of the things that has come to light in that is the variety in terms of the exercise of that discretion. So, for example, in Cork, 70% over the national average medical cards were given. In Meath, 70% under the medical cards, under the national average were given. That's not equitable, it's not fair. So we need to have a system that takes account of real hardship, that is compassionate, that understands that the cases, and Deputy Calleary's instance, another one today, are unacceptable, that people who are faced with that sort of medical need should be assisted by the state. And that's why the Cabinet have decided to develop a policy framework to determine eligibility in a fair and open way, not on the basis of where you live in the state, which has been the condition for the last number of decades, but on objective criterion. But the criterion also has to be linked to some financial grounding, because that's the basis of the 1970 Act. Or we can have a broader debate about looking at how we can afford to ensure that everybody who is sick gets comprehensive medical care for free.
Deputy Cleary. Thank you.
Minister, it's extraordinary, an extraordinary response. Your cabinet, according to Minister Noonan, spent a long discussion on medical cards. All of your parliamentary parties, 16,000 discretionary medical cards were cut from January 2013 to April 2014. That's a cull in any language. That's a cull. That's discretionary cards taken from the case we've described, taken for children with disabilities, children with families with serious illnesses, being asked to put through the rigmarole. Now, again, you avoided the direct question I put to you. You've answered the other question, because I judge from your attitude that you may be the block to some sort of justifiable resolution to this issue. Do you have confidence in James Riley's ability to continue as Minister for Health? Straight yes or no, no need for soliloquy.
Firstly, I have full confidence in James Riley and every member of this government. I have full confidence in every Minister of State to do the job, the most difficult, challenging job that faces us all. Every department has been faced with very difficult economic decisions to make. We've worked as a collective, this government, to solve the issues, to bring us from a very difficult position to a position of solvency, which we've now arrived at. We've tried to do that and have done that in as compassionate and as open a way as we can. Have we made mistakes? Yes. And I agree with the Deputy. The handling in terms of the administration and some of the letters people got is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to every member of government. And we need to do better to ensure that people, because if you look at the discretionary medical cards and you look at the general review of medical cards, there's a normal turnover anyway. When you can instance thousands being changed. Out of 1.8 million, naturally, people's circumstances change, and there is people losing medical cards and new people gaining them. What we have to do is to have an objective system that works wherever you live in the country, that is compassionate, that takes account not only of financial means, but also of health criteria. And that's what is being developed now by the Department of Health and by the Minister for Health, and is going to come back to government within the next fortnight with those criteria, so that we can put in a rational, compassionate, national scheme that is not determined by where you live in this country, but on the real medical demands upon every household.
Thank you. Deputy Sandra McLennan.
Ara. News that the remains of some 800 babies have been found on convent grounds in Tuam has shocked the people of Ireland. Only for the efforts of a local historian, Catherine Corliss, these children would forever remain nameless in the ground, forgotten in death as they were in life. This scandal of neglect and maltreatment causing the deaths of children has understandably made headlines across the world. Unfortunately and tragically, Tuam is not an isolated case. Dozens of these homes were in operation in Ireland from the late 1800s well into the 20th century. We simply don't know how many of these mass graves might exist. Church and state cannot be allowed to abdicate responsibility. The government must face up to this shameful period of our recent history and shine a light on the dark secrets of mother and baby homes. Citizens need to know who died and why, and the location of their remains. Minister, will the government ensure a full audit of the 25,000 files currently in the possession of the HSE, so that we can know how many concern illegal adoptions, who was responsible, who knew about it, and what they did or did not do? What is needed now is a full public inquiry into the practices at all mother and baby homes across the state, to shed light on what led to the shocking infant mortality rates, the burial of untold hundreds of babies in mass graves, and the routine illegal adoption and trafficking of an unknown number of the surviving children. Minister, can you tell the Dáil today if the government will initiate a full public inquiry into the practices at mother and baby homes across this state?
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Ceann Comhairle, I think, like every member of this House and every citizen in the country, we thought we'd become inured to the things that fall out of our dark past in this country. But I think the discovery of a mass grave of infants and children is something that is so shocking that it jars all of us to our core. The government is determined to get to the bottom of what exactly is the situation in Tuam. All the questions the Deputy asked must be answered, and beyond Tuam for other centres. For that reason, the government has established an interdepartmental group. That interdepartmental group is meeting now. It will report back to government as quickly as is practicable and as possible, but certainly no later than the end of this month, on how we should progress. Let me tell the Deputy in the House that this government is ruling out nothing in terms of what needs to be done, but those questions that you rightly posed. I think the sense of revulsion almost of the people of Ireland at the callous disregard for the most innocent of our young people has to be met with openness and with clarity, and that's what the government will do.
Deputy McLennan, 1 minute. Thank you.
Minister, citizens have been confronted in recent years with one revelation after another regarding the abuse of people in religious-run institutions that were supported by this state. The scale of the abuse perpetrated against Irish women and children, which has been exposed in these cases, has been absolutely horrific. In order to get to the truth about these scandals, it was necessary to have the Commission to inquire into child abuse, generally known as the Ryan Commission, published in 2009, the Ferns Inquiry, the Klein Report and the Murphy Report. We have also had the scandal of the Magdalen laundries. The state is still facing to face up to its responsibilities in relation to the Bethany home or to apologise to its victims. Minister, if we were to have adopted the approach that the government advocates in relation to the Tuam baby scandal, the various inquiries and reports to which I have referred would not have seen the light of day. Isn't it crystal clear, therefore, that a full public inquiry is the only conceivable course of action when confronted with evidence of the gravity which has now come to light in Tuam?
Minister.
I think the Deputy had prepared her second question before she heard my answer to the first one. Let me just let me. What we need to know is get to the bottom of all these issues. The early decades of our state, the attitude of the early decades of the state to women, particularly to unmarried women, to the most vulnerable, reveals again and again a shocking litany of disregard for our citizens. This government was the first in decades to deal with the Magdalen laundry women, and I'm proud of the record of the government in addressing that. We will address this issue too. We'll address it in a comprehensive way, because it's not confined to Tuam, as you rightly say. We need to scope out exactly what are the questions to be answered, because we're working now on records. There's been no excavation. We don't know what is in those graves in Tuam yet. We need to scope, and that's what the interdepartmental group is doing now, what needs to be examined, the questions in a comprehensive way. And that will come to government in a matter of weeks. It's taken decades for our country to get to the level of maturity now where we look back in shock at what happened. But we're going to have to reveal those dark days with clarity and with purpose, and that's what the government will do.
Thank you. Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, Minister, I too want to raise the same issue. And I think since the news broke last week, like everyone else, I can't get the image of the idea of 800 tiny babies, helpless children, neglected, starved, and eventually discarded. And I respect and acknowledge the endeavours of Catherine Corliss and our committee, who initially sought to erect a memorial to the children that they knew had died in the home, but the extent of what was found was way beyond what was expected and now requires so much more than a memorial or indeed an apology. Today, finally, the atrocity has been openly discussed in the national media, but I'm concerned about the sanitised language that's being used when discussing it. We're hearing references to burials, when in fact, in the case of Tuam, what we're talking about is a septic tank. The discovery in the 1970s by two boys revealed the nature of the disposal of the remains, and it poses questions. And clearly, they were not respectful burials. They were disposals as though these children were subhuman. It's stomach churning. Recently, the UN pulled no punches when they described the Magdalen laundries as places of forced labour, with slavery-like conditions. There appears to be some sort of reluctant acceptance of the issues here. The UN was able to call it what it was. We need to call it what it is. We need clarity in this particular case. This obviously was not the only mother and baby home with issues like this. I mean, obviously the Bessborough case, there was horrific stories about the mortality rates there. This morning in the media, I repeatedly heard what the Archbishop had to say. Minister, I do think at this time we also need, and I have more interest in hearing what the Minister for Justice and what the Garda Commissioner have to say on this. And I want to ask you the following questions. I too believe that a public inquiry is needed, and we need to acknowledge that straight away. A public inquiry is needed, and I would ask you, will you commit to holding a public inquiry? Do you agree, Minister, that the nature of disposal of the bodies suggests that it was intended as a hidden secret? And you have to ask the question, why would that be the case? Minister, if this septic tank was found anywhere else in the country other than beside a religious institution, it would now have been declared a crime scene. Will you, and it begs the question, why has this not been declared a crime scene? It needs to be declared a crime scene.
Thank you. Minister.
There's much that's been said by the Deputy with which I agree. I think characterising the children as being discarded is an accurate characterisation, and it goes to the attitude that the state had over those decades to the children of unmarried mothers. It is shocking, it is unacceptable, and it's appalling, and we have to meet that. We have to meet that in our time, as we've met other awfulness from our past. So what I've said is, in terms of a public inquiry, whatever, I'm ruling nothing out, speaking on behalf of the government now. We're scoping out how far this went. Are there others we need to look at? Are there other locations? That needs to be determined. What records exist within the HSE or within religious institutions? That needs to be determined. And we will scope this out in the coming weeks and come back to this House with a proposal. And then we'll have a proper, I think, cross-party debate, as all of us want, to have the full truth exposed on these apparently horrific events that scar our past.
Deputy Murphy.
Minister, an interdepartmental inquiry and scoping it out is fine. But it has to happen in parallel with this being seen as a crime scene. We know that in previous cases, for example, in mother and baby homes, there were drug trials took place. Did it happen in this location? And that needs to be part of the inquiry. Could it have accounted for the very high mortality rates? Those running the homes clearly treated the women and children as subhuman, and not to deal with this case in an equal manner to other human remains on earth reaffirms that status posthumously. No government department, no set of records and no paper records can reveal what the Gardaí, the state pathologist or forensic anthropologist can reveal. They can tell us if crimes were committed at this scene. It is possible to fully understand and to know what went on here. But for that to happen, the authorities have to do now what they didn't do before. They have to act now. So my questions are, could drug trials have contributed to the high death rates here? Is it known if inquests were held into these deaths? What exactly are the government inquiring into, and what departments are involved? And finally, Minister, will you declare this, or will you seek to have this declared as a crime scene?
Thank you. Minister.
Well, firstly, obviously, it's not to me to declare a crime scene. That's a matter for the Garda Síochána, who are the independent investigators of crime in this country. But all the data needs to be looked at now, and that's what we are determined to do in a comprehensive way, as I've indicated to the House. The interdepartmental group is meeting now. Among the departments, and there's a range of departments involved, is the Department of Children, obviously, the Department of Health, the Department of Justice, and there may be other departments involved. I'll get a full list of the membership to the Deputy. But that's simply to look beyond, because we don't want to embark on any process that is not comprehensive, that will just simply leave things out. So let us, these things are decades in the making. This awfulness happened many decades ago, but we will now, in our time, have a comprehensive look at what happened, reveal as much truth as we can that it lies within any official records, and have such inquiries as are appropriate, including criminal inquiries, if that is deemed appropriate by the Garda authorities, who are the investigators of crime.
Thank you. That completes